Okay.
Okay.
The next one is Neil. I only
I
received
only received
one memorandum, and it was about
and it was about
annual and
annual and
special town
special.
meeting. Um,
Uh,
Can
the Board
everybody
of
else
Select,
hear that?
hear that?
Yeah, there's a
Yeah,
lot of
there's a lot
feedback.
of
We
feedback.
should all mute.
Okay.
okay. Is everything okay now?
Yeah, I think that was it. I think there was feedback on somebody. So if we just mute till we want to talk with it.
Okay. Yeah, because I was getting feedback too. Um, okay, the board voted to open the annual and special town meeting warrant on February 3rd, 2021. Warrant articles will be accepted for the annual town meeting warrant until March 1st. Warrant articles will be accepted for the special town meeting warrant until April 2nd, 2021. So that's it on the mail. 1.5 is the minutes. Did everybody get the minutes for February 11th and February 18th? Okay. Has everybody read them?
I believe so.
All right, then I need a motion.
I'll make a motion to accept February 11th and February 18th minutes.
Seconded.
Okay. Second. Steve. The next thing is, did everybody get the Board of Health budget?
Yes, but not opened.
Okay, no, I just wanted to make sure that everybody
I
got
think
it.
so.
Yeah.
I'm using the wrong.
Yeah, I got it.
I got two mice here and they fighting each other. BOH was here somewhere.
All right. So 2.1 is we're going to talk about the budget for the police station. And Chief Sartell is with us now, so we can get right into it.
Hey, Lynn.
Yes?
So I'm going to run. I remember I told you I had to run into the
Yep.
McNabb real quick. So I'm going to stay on the line. So if you see Chief Sartell, someone else is driving my car. It's not me. It's been stolen. So if I don't get back on, I'll be right back.
All right.
We'll watch it for you.
All right, Chief Sardell. Yeah. I must have new teeth today. James, are you out there?
I am. Thank you very much for having me.
There you
I'm
are.
happy to answer questions, or I can give you a brief overview as what I think you probably have questions about going in, or it's up to you. Can go either way.
Well, I think if you would give us an overview, because sometimes you answer the questions we have by doing that.
Yeah, that's what I figured. Okay. So I in looking at our budget worksheet, and it's you're dealing with probably a couple dozen lines on the police department's budget. I think the things that jumped out at me that I put little thought bubbles next to that I figured people would have questions about are in the salary area. We got rid of and eliminated the deputy chief's position. I'll take you back to July, I think it was, or June, or whatever beautiful summer day we met in the common where I kind of went over our plans to reorganize. Now that's taken its shape in this budget here where we've eliminated the deputy chief's position in favor of an additional lieutenant's position, which gives us 2 command officers. The net savings on that on an annual basis is probably about 25,000, probably a little bit more because it does impact some of our other lines, the deputy chief versus the lieutenant, I mean. But the savings is probably somewhere in the area of $25,000. And I know Jim's on the call. He could add to that if he feels that that's up or down, but I believe that that's probably right.
Now, if I can stop you right there.
Sure.
I noticed on the budget that was anybody hired for that job?
Yes, well, not as of yet. We have someone finalist that's in background now. So the way that the timeline went for that is Jim and I, at the end of it, the decision was made late in budget season. I'll take you back to that point in time. Chief Bailey was still chief when I was putting the budget together for fiscal 21. So we really didn't have an idea of how this was all going to shake out. By the time it went to warrant, and by the time that had happened, Mr. Kreidler and I had gotten together and we prorated that position for fiscal 21. So it's funded, and we planned on bringing that person in probably, I can't remember exactly, Jim could pipe in, might have been January, maybe December of 20 into January of 21. However, with COVID and everything, the process was a little slower, but we did do our process. We had our interviews. The subject was selected. There is a conditional offer of employment on the table. The person's being background as we speak. It's actually something I'm doing on the daily. Probably looking to onboard by April-ish. We think is a pretty aggressive timeline, but that's where we're at relative to that position. So moving on, if there's no questions about that, you'll see another big dip where there was reserve officer reduction in spending in that line of like 27% or so. That's really just adjusted to reflect the actual spending in that line. What we've done in the last couple of years is retooled that program and required reserve officers to work a certain amount of shifts a month to maintain proficiency, to keep up with their training and that type of thing. So we've been able to track it for the past couple years pretty accurately as to what that's going to cost us. So that line was just reduced to kind of account for that reduction, what we've seen year over year. Training wages, you'll see there was a reduction in that line as well of about 17%. That was to try and deal with the level budget. This has been, I'm sure you've heard this time and time again, serving on this committee for as long as some of you have. A level funded budget really isn't level if my energy costs and costs of doing business are increased year over year. So to adjust for that, I was looking for lines to cut. This was one cut that I feel has very little impact. And the reason being is because these wages largely come out of our overtime line. I will tell you folks that we are in the process at the town hall level of instituting a new payroll system. The town purchased Harper's payroll system that's going to automate this process and make it more efficient. When we do that, we may have the residual effect of being able to pull these types of things out of lines more efficiently. As of now, what ends up happening when a guy goes away on training is it gets pulled out of the overtime line. And the process is just far too manual to have it pulled out of the right lines. So really all that really reflects is again, year over year spending. We see that line really only gets spent at that much. And if you look at that, you can look at the past couple of years and you'll see what I'm saying. Moving forward from an efficiency standpoint, I would imagine that the finance committee would be in favor of getting that Harper's payroll system up off the ground. I can tell you as a department head that it's going to be very, very efficient from our perspective of making sure payroll comes out of proper lines. It becomes difficult to try and study and analyze these things if you don't automate them. And Harper's payroll, which the town has recently purchased, will really help in that regard. The other big ones, the big driving ones was repair and maintaining the building. That went up about 13%. It's a smaller line. It's only about a $20,000 line. 17,000 to be exact. Again, kind of one of those things where it's the continuing process of understanding the building's needs. We do have a couple big ticket items. I've been before this committee in the past asking for unanticipated money for this elevator, for instance. What we've tried to do with Rob, who's a fantastic addition to the team, is trying to level those costs a little bit by virtue of being involved in maintenance agreements. So we're looking at our maintenance agreement for Stanley Elevator, for instance, and seeing what we can get and moving it around and shaking it, and seeing whether or not we can partner with the schools to get those things done a little bit cheaper. But suffice to say, that's a difficult line for me in particular. Over the years, I think the facilities here in town have been centralized and then decentralized, centralized again, decentralized again. So that volatility has really made it difficult for a department head to understand just exactly what our responsibilities are versus facilities. The addition of Rob is making some headway at fixing that. Really happy to have that happen. But we are going to see that this line is a difficult one to wrestle to the ground. But the increases reflect a move to more contracts, more performance maintenance contracts, more preventative maintenance that hasn't been done, those types of things. Lastly, you'll see a major drop in our communications line of 45%. That one is indicative of we're really getting a handle on our phone line situation. It's continuing to evolve. I'm able to kind of pare down some of these communications expenses, but we do have a fleet of mobile data, cellular lines and that type of thing. But it's a work in progress, but we were able to make some significant headway this last fiscal year at getting a better understanding of what we could eliminate. We eliminated a bunch of redundancy, and we're still working on that with our dispatch center, trying to make that as efficient as we possibly can. So that's that big drop. So all in, it's about I want to say it's $43,000 more than last year's budget. I could be wrong. It's in my budget memo. Let me pull it up real quick. Oh, sorry, 23,000. It's $23,000 more than last year's budget, meaning fiscal 21. So it's again, it's a process, I think. I'm not so sure still. This is my fourth budget I've prepared for the department, and I'm still learning as we go. We are refining our processes here to track it better so I can be more informed as to where these things go and allocate them where they go. This may be the last one that's easy to level fund, and this wasn't easy. It was pretty difficult, but this may be the last one where I'm not having to dip into services to level fund. We do have some long-term expenses and that are difficult to get out from underneath and level, but that's my goal, is to try and stabilize costs so we know what it costs year over year rather than having these dramatic spikes in our budget. So yeah, this one represents about a $23,000 increase over last year's. And when you're talking about a $1.6 million budget, I think that's pretty level.
Okay, so now I'm going to turn it over to the team. And if anybody has a questions, just unmute and ask James right away.
Well, I think it was pretty much self-explanatory as he went along with it.
Mm,
I don't really have anything that I'm questioning that much.
yeah. I do have a question though on that, on the lieutenant's position, the one that's open.
Mhm.
So
Are you on line 247? Is that where you are?
January, February? Oh, well, this is.
No, on line 247. Is that what you're looking at?
I think it's budget line 316, the police lieutenant.
Yeah, Mrs. Pinkerton, you're not picking up. I think
Oh,
you're on mute. I
you
can't hear you.
me?
Oh, I can hear you now.
Good. So I'm just wondering if they're not coming in until, well, now we're in March. And I mean, it was still allocated for 82K for that position.
So I think you're kind of talking about two different fiscal years. So fiscal 21, it was planned to have him in. So we're talking about last year's allocation would just be the back end of fiscal 21 that we're still in. It's budgeted entirely for fiscal 22, which is the budget we're looking at now.
Okay, but we still didn't have a person in there.
Correct. Right. So in my budget right now in fiscal 21, we have an offset based on the couple months that he hasn't been here, if that's even right. I can't remember if it's January or December, but either way, yeah, that would reflect itself in a surplus in my fiscal 21 budget that I can tell you in no uncertain terms is going to get gobbled up on my overtime line. But yeah, that's
Yeah.
correct. We are going to have a little bit of a surplus bringing him in April versus bringing him in January.
Okay.
Yeah.
You know, I just wanted a little clarification on the communication one.
Sure.
where
Yeah,
20
I can give you a little presentation before we go. Maybe I'll answer your question in advance. But the communications line, or in budget as a whole, has really turned into the public safety IT/communications line. And Chief Boynton and I administrate this together. And really all that's in there are dispatch fees, which is the lion's share of this budget, our IT contract, and some residual stuff for communications that takes care of our communications infrastructure. Some of our computer expenses are in there, maintenance of our towers, those types of communication expenses are what's in this budget. So everything was basically flatlined from last year, meaning fiscal 21 into fiscal 22, with the one exception, and that's the assessment that Neshoba pushed out. Then the assessment for Neshoba went from, I think, 174 to almost 200,000. I think it's 199.9 or something like that. You'll find that in line, looks like 5380 other services. So that's what we pay Neshoba every year. Jim and I, we're pretty good about paying attention to that stuff. And Jim's excellent at being able to change that if the assessment comes in less than what we gauge. That's happened to us in the last couple years where I came to you asking for 190. And then when the assessment came out, they said it was 170 and Jim would change that before it went to Warren. This year, that will not be necessary because we know it's a firm 199.9 or whatever it is. It's right at $200,000, give or take a couple $100 for fiscal 22. The Neshoba Valley Regional Dispatch District has done a better job in the finance area completely. They've brought on a finance person. The committee has been formed that is the financial people in the donor towns. Lori Plurd was part of that process. So they have gotten their handle on their budget a little bit better, which is why they were able to give us a more firm number. The unfortunate byproduct of that is I think the true cost of the center kind of bled through now that you had somebody actually line by line going through the budget, which I'm afraid to say was not happening the first couple of years that we were in the center. So that said, they did come with us with a firm number for an assessment for fiscal 22 of that $200,000.
Great. All right. Those were the ones I had. So Dawn, do you have any questions?
Sorry, just making sure it's unmuted. When we mentioned the deputy chief position going away, I'm just thinking for ease in comparison of the budget, it's kind of like I'm thinking it would have been to see that number in the 21, so we'd have a comparison year over year.
Right. It's a little difficult to do, Mr. Hayes, for a couple of reasons, but the biggest reason is because we were dealing with this right at the budget season last year, where by the time it went to Warren, we had just the paint was really just fresh on the reorg, and what I was able able to put together as far as what type of an organization, a chart that we would have. So the number that you're seeing last year reflected is really just prorated of that deputy spot as opposed to the full freight. What I would encourage you to do, if you look at the budget worksheets that we prepared for the town administrator, you can look at the actuals from 19 and 20. It gives you a better understanding. The actuals from 19 and 20 for that deputy's position are 122 or 123,000-ish. All in for this new lieutenant is around $100,000, probably a little less when you consider where the money comes out of. So again, that's where you're seeing the benefit from moving away from the deputy to a lesser rank, probably in the area of about $25,000 when you consider some of those other things, uniform expenses, longevity payments, these types of things that we may have been paying with the deputy that we will not be paying with the lieutenant out to shoot, or it's a lesser fee.
Okay, thank you.
Right. I don't know if Steve's back yet. Sam?
Yeah, I've been back. I've been listening. I don't have anything. I think for $23,000 through trying to level fund a public safety budget is a great job on my part. I mean, Lynn, you asked the question that I had on my mind, but I'm good.
Okay. Sam?
I'm fine. I mean,
All right. We got
sorry, I
Dawn.
can't seem to find the paperwork to match it all, but I did find the memo.
Okay. Was that Andrea that came on board?
Yep,
Hello.
Okay, Andrea, do you have any questions for the chief?
yes. In your cover letter, you talked about mandated programs, and you also talked about 3 budgets you had prepared. It's my understanding, is it correct, that the budget that we're reviewing, that you submitted, has none of the groundwork for to take care of any of those mandates?
So that's a loaded question, Ms. Wood, but yeah, that's correct. That being said, it is so early in the process of criminal justice reform that it would be hard to get a handle on that as well. This lieutenant onboarding is going to be a great step in that direction. So it's really kind of a mixed bag. Would I like some residual funding to help with some consultation and with policy building and understanding the impact of this? Yes, absolutely. That said, I understand the nature of finances in the town of Townsend. I'm paying attention. I try and read as much as I possibly can and attend as many of these meetings and the selectmen's meetings as I possibly can, in addition to meeting with the finance gal on a regular basis. So I understand the state of this state. I can make this work, or I would not have submitted it. That said, I do appreciate the fact that you're seeing that, Ms. Wood, to be honest, because I do think there are a number of unfunded mandates in this criminal justice reform. And I encourage everybody from citizen to elected official to make that, to understand that has happened to us. It is going to be a difficult thing to even wrap our mind around what those costs are, because as the dust settles, people are interpreting that law differently, depending on who you're talking to. So I do think that there are some unfunded mandates that are going to make it very challenging for us. But the addition of an additional administrator here is going to be a huge step in the right direction, as far as at least being able to formulate policy consistent with these new regulations and new law and new regulatory framework that we're seeing. So I guess the answer is a mixed bag. No, it does not meet all of those needs, but I would not be able to tell you what those needs are accurately anyway at this stage of the game. It's way too early.
Good, thank you. And then I have one more question. Do you have any, other than let me start again, I'm sorry. You have something in capital planning?
We do. Yeah. What I ended up doing, Ms. Wood, and I think we've talked offline about this, and if for the other members, we've had a lot of projects that I have to still get on now. We've done a really good job this year with grant funding. I've got a couple big ticket items that I've been able to secure through grants. The Board of Selectmen was gracious enough to accept. That's going to take me a long time and some administrative juice to get off the ground and get running on. So I pushed out again the capital stuff that I had in my 5-year plan out another year, with one exception. I'm asking that we look at renovating this building to better use office space, look at our storage in the building in general, to actually address some of the changes in our organization now that we do not have a communications center here in the building. That said, there is a storage issue when it comes to dead records. And the unfortunate part of it for the police department is there's really no such thing as dead records. We need to maintain some of our records in perpetuity. So as such, I think before I make any decisions long-term about storage and rooms and moving boxes and files around like it's been done a half dozen times in the last 5 or 6 years, that we actually fund a project to have those records digitized. I've done this before. I've had this exact experience to digitize old records. So I spitball a figure and put that together and put that on our capital plan. So it's really part one of a two-part plan. It's part of our renovation project, but I do think we need to do that before we do the renovation. Since I've actually unrolled it, I've heard from other departments within the town, and Ms. Keller has brought this up as well, that they may look at something a little bit more broadly and do it town-wide and maybe capitalize on a little economy of scale. I can't remember offhand. I've got it here. I've got my capital plan here. I think I asked for 30,000 or something along them lines to facilitate it for us. But it's really part of a larger project of renovating the building to better meet the needs of the organization as opposed to when we had a dispatch center.
All right. Do you have plans, or have you submitted an article, a warrant article for the town meeting?
No, I kept that in capital, and I figured through the budget process, they would figure out where that pot of money would come from. If they even approved it. I'm not blind to the fact that there's been some things on our capital plan that would probably, from a priority standpoint, push this to the rear. I know the fire department has some significant items on that capital plan that are in dire need of funding. I'm not immune to seeing that type of stuff. So I don't know where the monies would come from. It's my understanding the free cash it's not been solidified, and that may be a source of funding, but the reality is that may not be much to pull from. I know Mr. Kreidler's on the call. He's probably better person to ask about these types of things. But no, we did not specifically put a warrant article together. But that's not to say that Mr. Kreidler and I are done speaking about the issue.
Yes. Thank you.
Chief, I do have one question. This is more looking down the road. And when you talk about communications, is that something that you may be looking into bringing back into town? Or is it still more cost effective to what you're doing now?
So we do have an ad hoc committee. The fire chief and I, along with Captain Grimley from the fire department, have been put together as a committee to look at a Pepperell-Ashby-Townsend merger. And this goes back for a couple of years. We've been working on this type of thing. First was a feasibility study to look into it. And Mr. Sheldon, I would recommend that you read that report because I think you'd get a lot out of it. Be happy to send it along to you. Pepperell and Ashby have merged. It's being run out of the Pepperell Dispatch Center as we speak. They've already kind of put together an MOU. They've got an organization put together. It's going to take some work for us to remove ourselves from Neshoba. And certainly an action plan being put together would be wise. The fire chief and I have worked together within even the last month or so. We're trying to itemize that and make that as a cost neutral if we were to do something like that and provide that option to the Board of Selectmen. I do know that it's something that they are interested in at least listening to. There is no panacea. I don't think there's going to be much of, if any, of a cost savings. And the fire chief and I have been working at trying to itemize that to get it to a place where we can quantify what that even looks like. Suffice to say, it's a lot cheaper to pay for that service than to have in-house employees, not to mention the massive lift that would take both from a capital standpoint, but also from bringing on all those employees. To undo that and add a new center to this building or to the fire department, you're talking about a completely different thing. What we've been talking about internally with that ad hoc committee on behalf of the board was getting together, exploring whether or not merging with Pepperell and Ashby is a better alternative to Neshoba. So when I'm looking at it through that lens, we're still trying to quantify that and get it to a point where we can make an argument that it's at least cost neutral and that the services would be better justifying the move. That's where we're kind of at now. The timeline is a little goofy as well. We would have to give Neshoba notice by January to leave by the end of that, whatever fiscal year that we were in. So we've got some time. Obviously, January of 22 would be when we'd have to give notice that we'd be leaving July of 22. So it's something the fire chief and I are working on actively. We do have a plan to bring that at some point before the Board of Selectmen with some alternatives, but getting figures and fees together in a way that makes sense and can be easy to digest has been a bit of a challenge, and we are working on it.
Yeah, I would definitely be interested in reading it. My apologies. And that's what I meant. I knew that Pepperell Ashby, and I think it was brought up a while ago about us maybe considering joining or getting involved. But yeah, I'd love to read it, and thank you for answering that.
Sure, I will. I'll send the copy of the feasibility report to you, Steve. If you would just forward it to the rest of the members that might be interested, I think that would be the most economical way to do it.
Will do.
All right, so has everybody had a chance to talk to the chief? All right. Now, have the unions finished their deliberation or? Jim?
Madam Chair?
Yes.
No, each of the bargaining units is still at the table. That would be police, fire, the clerical, the supervisors, and the highway water. They're in the budget that you have in front of you. You'll note that in nearly all of the salary lines, there's a notation that says call-in center. So the board has directed that the implementation of the call-in center plan be budgeted. So that doesn't mean that those funds will be spent. If they get budgeted and passed at town meeting, that would at least afford the board the opportunity to settle contracts with those dollars. But as of now, they're not finalized, but those funds are showing, at least at this point in the.
Okay. So, speaking to the team, did you want to take a motion on this police budget?
I'll make a motion that we pass the police budget.
I'll second it.
Sorry, and Andrea. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
So I want to thank Chief for being here and explaining things. And as far as we're concerned, your budget has
Well, you're
been
very welcome.
passed.
Again, I appreciate the time that you've given me along the way during the year. You come up with an idea, you think of something that you think would help and make my job a little bit more efficient, or a way we can consolidate a service, please reach out. You guys all know how to get a hold of me. I'm at the other end of the phone or the other end of the email, and I'd be more than happy to come in anytime.
Excuse me. When, the same goes for you, when you start knowing what those mandates are, if you give us hints that, you know, around costs or what it's going to cover, then we can start thinking long-term about funding sources and things like that. So that would benefit us as well, all of us.
Excellent. That might be a good idea to check in with you maybe at the halfway point and give you at least an update on what that's looking like. I'll make note of that and try and do that for you.
Thank you.
Okay, I didn't hear what was going on because my screen froze. And I couldn't hear anything.
The chief's going to come in and update you guys halfway through the year about what he knows about the funding mandates. for the law enforcement reform.
Oh, great. Great. That's good. All right. Well, thank you again,
Very
Chief,
welcome. Good night.
and we'll be talking to you later.
Good night.
Good night,
Good
Chief.
night. Okay, the next thing on the agenda are the warrant articles to review budgets and set future meetings with department heads. So I think we ought to, my opinion is that next the fire, and because that's a big one. And the only other one I think we have is the Board of Health.
How about highway department?
I haven't seen that one.
Well, he was scheduled to meet with the selectmen on not this meeting, but their meeting before. So it must have turned in a budget.
He did, Madam Chair, and I'm not in office right now, but I'll send myself a note to forward off his individual worksheets. But what you see in the overall budget book is a direct reflection of what his requests were. There's not much more detail beyond that. Okay. So you do have at least a really solid basis to see what his requests were and what's currently plugged in the budget.
So you guys can discuss, while I'm looking for this, discuss which ones you would like to do next. There it is.
Jim? Jim,
Yes.
do you have any better idea of what the selectmen plan on discussing on Saturday?
I do not. I know that the school will likely be a big point of discussion, given that on Monday night, 2 days after our Saturday meeting, they're holding their next unveiling of their version of the budget. And I do have an update on that I can share with you. I forwarded some of the email communication I've had in the last day to you folks, at least to those.
I forwarded it to everyone. Yeah.
Okay. So as of a week ago, the message we had from the school superintendent was that they had further reduced their overall budget from a 2.5% overall increase down to a 2.02% increase, which reflected about a $450,000 decrease on the overall budget. My interest was much more in what was the effect on our local assessment. And that question was mirrored by my counterpart in Pepperell, Mr. McLean. before getting the opportunity to get that question answered, I did receive another email at about 5:27 this morning from the superintendent, informed me that the school committee's finance subcommittee met last night. And based on information they've received from the governor's office and the secretary of education regarding the requirements that they expect to be held to in the fall, specifically full-time attendance in school and social distancing mandates and the type of physical work they'll have to do to accommodate that they added money back into the budget last night, that they added another $250,000 back in. So you may have seen the email. I believe I copied it to you. My response back at about 6 this morning was, can appreciate his difficulties, but it doesn't seem he can appreciate ours. That we cannot fund that type of an increase. We've offered to work together. We've not been given the opportunity, but the offer still stands. So I did get a call. I should say, my counterpart, again, Mr. McLean from Pepperell, I'm very pleased to say he followed up with the same message that their assessment as is currently set is around $800,000 increase, and they have 450 to 475 at max that they could increase. So they're in the same position, lockstep with us, that the school committee has to do something different. One of the questions that Mr. McLean raised was regarding a specific type of funding that the governor included in his budget that is new. And the belief is that it's going to make it through the House and the Senate's versions of the budget and live to be enacted. The school, according to the discussion I had today, is a little leery about relying on those funds because there is still a lot between the governor's proposal and the budget being fully enacted. Having said that, if the funding does come to make it all the way through the process, it's an amount of money, and the language says that 75% of it can be used to reduce excuse me, assessments for member communities. So, I asked what the translation would be on that for our assessment, and it would be about a $300,000 decrease in our assessment if those funds survive. So I think the discussion on Saturday is going to be in large part about the school budget and how to best present ourselves on Monday night. And whether it's the recommendation, suggestion that they use more of their E&D to pay down those assessment bills, or they use this money from the governor with the understanding that if it doesn't come through at the end of the day, they could backfill with E&D in an equal dollar amount. But that one of those scenarios needs to take place because they need to get 2 out of 3 communities to support the budget. And right now, the 2 larger of the 3 have taken the position very publicly that they do not support any of the budgets that they've rolled out so far. So I think that'll be the majority of the discussion on Saturday is drilling down into that, understanding it completely, and coming up with a unified plan to present to the school committee.
If we're going to do this may seem out of whack, but to me, because we always get rushed at the end of the year, we would like to try to handle the problems all at once. Would it be wrong to bring up the article regarding them establishing a stabilization fund at the Saturday meeting when we discuss the school?
No, I think that'd be very appropriate because it'll be part of the discussion on Monday night as well. Some of the discussion I expect will be taking the money that the governor has, if it makes it all the way through, and if it is not applied to buy down the assessments, and the argument that you should allow us to set up a stabilization and we'll put that money in there. And I look forward to having that discussion on Saturday about the pros and cons of the school department having a stabilization fund.
Some years ago, I don't remember how many, we did vote to have Neshoba Tech form a stabilization fund. So that's likely to come up
Sure.
too. Certainly with North Middlesex it'll come up. I don't know if it will come up in the Saturday discussion, but yeah, that's there.
Right. I mean, I think until we get the assessment issue fully ironed out and there's some
Right.
reasonableness to it, it makes no sense to me to spend time creating another vehicle to store excess money in, because right now there is no excess money.
Right.
There's not enough money.
Yeah. Well, the reason I wanted to bring up the article, first of all, because I think it's important, but because there's so much going on, and there aren't too many, at least at this point, from last night's selectmen's meeting, I gather not too many financial articles have been submitted.
Correct.
That I'm afraid that it'll kind of get lost in the shuffle and get voted through without us having really thought about it, or not us so much, but us to present to the public so they know what they're voting on, so they know what they're doing.
Right. And I think it's a good point on your part, Andrew, to make certain that everybody at the table on Saturday gets an understanding about what this is about and develops a consensus opinion so it's clear at town meeting.
Yeah.
But tomorrow,
Yeah, I just want to make sure that my team has,
I'm gonna check right now, actually. I can't because I'm on the call, but when I get off the call, I'll email the link to you,
yep,
Madam Chair, and then if you can send it around to your
sure, I
folks. Okay.
will. All right. So we have the fire and EMS and the Board of Health, and Jim's gonna send me the Highway Department.
You know, in a way, is it wise to do the Board of Health now, or should we wait to decide? Because we probably will have to meet with them again when they decide how they're going to handle that trash pickup contract.
I only mentioned it because so yesterday. I and EMS we should do.
All right. So when I send out invitations, I send one to Boynton.
Yeah.
Boynton.
Yes.
Jim Smith at the Highway Department, and Carla at the Board of Health, or what?
No, I think 2's enough for now.
So the Highway and the Fire EMS, or the Fire and the Board of Health?
No, I would like to have the highway department and the fire and EMS.
Okay. It's one department, fire EMS.
Correct. Okay, does everybody agree with that, or do they want to make any changes?
That's kind of thing.
I'm fine.
Yeah, I'm fine.
Action item. Should we do the highway first?
I would do highway first and then, because the other one will take longer.
Yeah. So then we could have him in at, say, 5:15 for the highway department.
Okay.
And
Do we have that book?
Jim's gonna send it to me and I'm gonna
Oh.
send it to you.
Thank you.
Okay? All right. And then fire and EMS.
I have that. I
Yeah,
thought.
right. But I'm talking now what time we're gonna have them in. It's gonna be next Thursday.
Well, why don't you give highway a half an hour and then go into the other one?
Yeah.
I don't know if
So
you'll
it's
take
Can
it.
you check?
5:45, we can have Mr. Boynton come in.
That have you checked with Harley to find out, you know what, today we can only go till 6:30, right?
Well,
If
tonight is a hard stop at 6:30.
right, but our next meeting next Thursday, do you know if he has a hard stop there too?
No, that was my next step.
Okay.
Okay, Hartley, are you on? Where is he? Hartley,
Lynn, he might not be able to hear you. We had some trouble.
oh, there you are. Thank you.
We were having problems last night with headphones and stuff during senior bingo. So that's why I thought he couldn't hear you.
Ah,
Not that I was playing bingo, I just got the call.
I
okay.
was just asking if we're a senior.
No, Hartley called and said he was having some issues.
Thursday. It would be just a minute. Would be March 5th. No, March 4th. So, no, 4th.
No,
No, Thursday, the
Thursday.
March 4th.
Yes.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Correct.
is there any, yeah,
And
Hartley,
make-
is there anybody going?
Not as of yet.
Okay.
so
Well, how late would you want to book it out to, Lynn, in case he does get somebody?
Yeah, I'm just thinking, well, at least till 7.
7.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you get that, Hartley?
Then I'll make sure he
We
gets
got a
that.
thumbs up.
If he doesn't hit.
Okay.
He gave a thumbs up.
All right. Alrighty then. That's all that we had on the agenda tonight. Unless anybody has anything else they would like to bring up.
Well, in that case, I'll make a motion, we adjourned.
I second.
Let's see.
What
Okay,
time?
it is 6:02.
Thank you.
Okay,
Good night,
good
all.
night.
See you.
Good night.
Good night,
Yeah.
folks.
Good night.
Yes.